Lovely. Okay, welcome everybody to the new next JODA webinar with Sparkjar. I'm actually delighted to be with Catherine and with Sylvie this evening, who are going to be talking all about Sparkjar and how it can be used for creative language teaching. Today is the 26th of October 2020, and without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Catherine, who's going to start us off by talking us through her slideshow. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you everybody that's joining us this evening. I will introduce myself and Sylvie will give a bit of detail about herself as well. Obviously, you know, my name is Catherine Jessey. I am a part-time science teacher and part-time teacher champion with Sparkjar. And we this evening are going to go through how Sylvie uses Sparkjar at her school, Dunottar. They have had iPads for the past couple of years and they use Sparkjar on those iPads with their students to share work and do all kinds of activities. Me personally, I am a really passionate advocate of edtech. I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator and I've been working in this sphere for a while now. At Sparkjar, we believe that tech should be working really hard for teachers and that actually teachers are getting a bit of a raw deal when it comes to the technology that we're using, because it should be doing a lot more of the hard work for us and making our lives easier, making it easier for us to do really good, high quality teaching. So that's at the forefront of everything that we aim to do at Sparkjar. This evening, Sylvie's going to share how she uses the app with her students, but specifically, some of the things that we'll cover are related to the current challenges that we're all facing in our classrooms because of COVID-19. So things like being able to get students to collaborate when they can't move around the room and they can't change groups from their normal seating that they're in. Viewing students' work. As a teacher, I walk around my classroom, but I know I'm not really allowed to go and look at a book and open it and flick through it. So how do I see all of the work they're doing, not just what they're submitting to me, and how we might use edtech to help us with that. And then also this idea that if we're using tech, it's at the moment perhaps adding to your workload, and actually it shouldn't necessarily be, it potentially should be making your life a lot easier. So I'm going to quickly switch out of the slideshow in order to show you Sparkjar, to give you some context of what the app looks like, so that as Sylvie is talking about her different aspects that she's using, it will actually make sense because you will have seen it. So I'm just going to switch, you'll see my face for a moment, and I'm going to go to my iPad and show you the app, which should pop up any moment. Okay, so as a teacher, when you open the app, this is what it looks like. Classes down the left-hand side, and if you were to open your classes, you'd then see the same information for all of them. So chat, assignments, topics, groups, and mark sheet. We link with the school's MIS, so SIMS or ISAMs or whatever your school uses to collect all student information together. So once the teacher logs in, all of their classes are already organised for them with all the right students, and they update day by day, so that changes in classes are already done for you. Students log in once and they've got all of their classes as well. Sylvie's going to go through topics first, so I'll just give you a little overview. So chat, we've got whole class chat, we can make little group chats and you can have one-to-one conversations with students. We've got assignments where you can set tasks, collect work in, see the work that you've got waiting to be marked. Return work, whoops, didn't mean to do that, never mind. And then topics, which is what Sylvie's going to look at first. So I'll just give a little bit of detail. In here is where you put all the resources relating to a particular area. You can give it a description, you can make the whole thing visible or invisible, and you can add all sorts of different resources. So you take photos, you can add links, you can do a whiteboard where you write on it for students and they can write on it too. And you can also add any resource that any other teacher has added in the app. So you can just go through, use a keyword, you can search by year group, by subject, by author, in order to add resources really quickly and easily without having done any filing of anything yourself. I think Sylvie's going to show us lots of different things that she uses it for, but just to give you another bit of perspective, say for instance, I've shared this with my students, I might want to present it to them live. So I can basically get it to beam to all of their iPads at the same time. Or I could even start a video call with the group so that everybody who's at home can see it as well. As part of a video call, they can see my face as well as see it just appear on their screen. And I can live annotate it so they can see everything I'm doing live on their iPads at the same time. So I'm going to come out there and I'm going to finish off. We'll come to groups later. I'll show you what those are used for, and also the mark sheet we'll look at pretty much near the end. Okay. So
can I just clarify, Catherine, those names, they're just dummy names, aren't they? They're not, they're not actual student names.
No,
just to clarify, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, more context. So when we play around with Sparkjar, we've got this thing called a playground, and I can basically be any of these students. So I can go and I can be Kathy, and I can see what it looks like from the student perspective as a student in a class, what she can see, what she can't see. And at the moment, actually, there are two real people here. There's Nathan and Tom, who are two of our developers. So they've been helping make some videos recently, so they've put themselves in. Yeah, sorry, I should have started with that.
No problem.
Okay, right, I'll come out there, and Sylvie, I'm going to switch back to the slides so that you can start telling us about your use of topics. Give me 1 second. Okay, that was a super quick tour. Okay, over to you, Sylvie.
First of all, thank you, Catherine. I can just introduce myself. So I'm Head of Languages at Dunottar School, and I'm the digital lead there. We started with iPads a few years back, and we started our journey with Sparkjar 2 years ago. So if you are on Twitter, you will follow, I hope, MFL Twitterati, and you can follow me on Sylvie Bartlett-Rawlings or Dunottar Lang. If you want to look at any of the creative work that was done through lockdown through the use of Sparkjar, I've tweeted quite a lot through Dunottar Lang, through May, June, and July as well. So a lot of the work that I will not have time to talk about, you can find when you look at medias on that Twitter account, basically. So in this session today, I'm going to look at specific elements of the app. I'm going to look at topics, but also at activities for settling in that we found very useful for remote teaching, or for the fact that we are moving rooms all the time. So you may find them useful, and those would have been ideas that I had or that were shared on Twitter or Facebook by colleagues. And activities that require minimum planning. Sparkjar is fantastic for that. How we use whiteboards as well, modeling, and the chat, grouping, and assignment. So these are the main points of the session. If it is not clear, please let me know through the chat, as I tend to speak quite fast, but please do so. Do ask any question on the chat, and we'll go over specific points if needed. So topics is what appealed to us greatly when we started on Sparkjar, because as Catherine said, it enables us to organize work in various categories, and to make it quite attractive as well to the students. We can make things apparent to them, whole topics or elements of the topics that we want to show them at the push of a button. So that also makes it a lot easier to use in out of the classroom, and it has a recording facility. So you can share what you do in lesson through topics as well. To start with, I will show you how I use our setting in activities, as we have to move classes, and in my case, some days I move up to 10 times. So it's pretty exhausting, and when I arrive, I want the children to get on with some work. And it's important that they focus, right from the start of the lesson. But first of all, let's just look at what topics look like. So this is a year 11 topic section that we are going through. So they have different folders, and we're working on la pauvreté et le bénévolat. As you can see, some of the folders, the element of the folders are visible, others aren't. There's independent work folder for them to get on with some grammatical work, some narrow reading or grammar. I also have created a whiteboard folder, and I will explain how we use that for quick starters in a moment. And then you have transcripts from This Is Language that we subscribe to, photo cards, grammar, all those folders they can access and work through at their own pace and annotate as they wish as well. And everything is kept on those. Again, I tend to, within the folder that is to do with the written work, to put the mark scheme. So when work is assessed and marked, they can refer back to the mark scheme for the 150 words. They have example of work that was taken from their work or someone else's work as well, and the speaking booklets from the year before. They can access work from the year before themselves as well, if they wish to do so, if they were at the school at the time. So going back to, if we now move to, so the topics are very simple in the way they are set, and I make sure that relevant to them. The visibility is controlled by me, and the fact that I created a whiteboard folder enables students to take notes when they wish to do so in a different folder, and keep those notes there if that's the case. Within the actual topics, they can annotate anything as they wish, and I can annotate things that will be visible to all students. So if we continue now, just looking at the settling in activities.
Sylvie, can I just ask a question, if that's okay? So,
sorry.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. So the content that you're uploading there or you're adding there, are those PDF files, or are you creating content within Sparkjar?
No, it's anything. So I can upload things from my OneDrive in the PDF format. I can upload photos, for example, which I will show later on, but I can take a picture of a piece of work that we are doing and upload it there. So it's a PDF, I can upload Word, PowerPoints, yes, any kind of format really, films, MP3, yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
All right. Okay, so just to show you, so I tend to push the settling in activity when I move from one class to the next. So the children are really used to that now. They go into their 5-a-day folder and then they start on the activity. So when I walk into the class, they're already engaged in the activity that is set. And it took a little bit of time for them to do that, but it makes my life a lot easier. So when I arrive in the lesson, they're already working on something that they're expected to do. And I can then plug my, my keyboard if I'm using the computer, or do a register. And that is a lot easier for the whole school as a whole. And also for students who are not in school, they can access all those folders and work through them at the same pace and see what's happening in them. So for absentees and students in the classroom, that works very well. So this is an example of an activity. Before I start on that, most of the activities are retrieval activities that we tend to do. And this one was inspired by what I saw on Twitter. And I'm sorry, I can't remember who created it. So if you did, then please put your name on the chat. But it's not the same one, but it's inspired from it. The children had to complete that translation within that activity. So they had to start a letter to do that, and they just completed it. And then what I did is I simply went through it with them. So this is just a recording of it when we were working through it in class, and then they were able to correct their own work within Sparkjar. So they don't need the exercise book to do that, they do it directly in Sparkjar. And then if I want to check it, I may ask one of them to mirror it, or I may ask the student to share what they have done through the one-to-one chat, so I can see the work that they have done. I may also ask them to peer assess the activity, which is quite a good thing to do within Sparkjar, so they don't need to share books or anything like that. Now, this activity is one you can see the students they did just a few weeks back. So they were working on description of clothing. It's a retrieval activity they did in pairs, and they did it against the clock. So one of the students was reading one of the sentences, so not necessarily in the right order, and then the other student had to translate it. And then they worked from English into French on the second exercise. And then they went back to the first one, which was from French into English, but this time they had to read to their partner the translation. So, il a les yeux bleus, il porte des lunettes. They had to read that in English, and their partner had to translate it back into French. So that kind of exercise was taking place when I walked in the classroom, and this is when I took these photos. So you can see how wonderful it is for them to do that. And at the end of the session, I took a picture of a screenshot of one of the students who had done the drawings that you can see here of the woolly hat and the plaited hair, because that supported them. So I decided that I would use that instead of mine within Sparkjar. And they can annotate it as they go along. It's their work. I don't see that, but I can ask them to mirror it, or again to share it through the one-to-one chat. The following lesson, so to have minimum preparation, I can reuse that, and as a starting activity, which they will do when they come back after half term, they will just translate it in their exercise book as a starter. So that will be a self-assessment. And then I may ask them to take a photo of that and then to swap it with their partner and to mark one another's work. So that can be reused as often as you wish. Other good settling in activities are obviously trapdoors. So I will talk to you through that, or sentence builders. I think we're all familiar with sentence builders and trapdoor, but with trapdoors, you just create one of those and then you can reuse in so many different ways. It can be used simply to write an extension, a sentence, and extend on it with an opinion. It could be used as a translation activity. It could be used simply as the game of trapdoor, so where the child starts with en ce moment, and if it is what their partner has chosen, the partner will have the thumb up. If it isn't, thumb down, and then they go to the next one. En ce moment, je regarde, thumb down. En ce moment, j'aime regarder, thumb up, and then they move on. There's so many ways, and those settling in activities, you can create just a handful of them and use them in different ways, and then they're ready to go at the beginning of the lesson. At this stage, I'd like to recommend Kate Jones' book, Retrieval Practice, which I have used extensively to create quite a lot of the settling in activities, and that's one of the mats that she's made available through her blog. Again, that's a very quick way to start, a lesson. What did you learn last lesson? They can write it down, ask your partner a question in French about the topic we are studying this term, and so on. So those little starting activities allow you to really get into your lesson in your class, do your register, and kick in, the rest of the lesson, making sure everything is working. Those 5 minutes are quite important when we are working as we are at the moment. Another thing that we do quite a lot of, obviously, the vocab learning. So I try to do systematic revision of vocabulary, every lesson, and they can revise some work at home. So we subscribe to Kerboodle, and they can do so at home. So some self-quizzing will take place. And at the start of the lesson, within one of the topics, they will have the listing of the vocabulary in English, for example, which I would have extracted from our Quizlet that I created from Kerboodle. So you can find that on Dunottar Languages. We have all the Kerboodle vocabulary within Quizlet there, and they will test themselves at the start of the lesson and then assess themselves with the two languages together. So everything is in topics, and they can access that and get on with the activities. It's a matter of getting them used to doing that, and then at the start of each lesson, that retrieval practice does take place. Another simple task which is again, so that's again, Rachel Hawke speaks a lot about revising vocabulary, but the retrieval of vocabulary from 3 weeks ago, 9 weeks ago, and so on. So what I tend to do, I tend to color coordinate, you know, so the first term will be in blue, you know, the first 3 weeks of term, and then I will do in orangey color the next 3 weeks, and then next term I'll add another color. So what would have been learned in September time would be in blue, and then October another color, and so on. And that retrieval practice as a starter is very good. And then they've got that within their topic. I can assess what they know or not without moving around the classroom by simply asking them to project it on the board or send it to me on the one-to-one chat. And it avoids all kind of movement. And it allows me to keep a pace in my lesson and to monitor their progress quite effectively as well. So, okay, so yeah.
Okay, over to me again. Just going to go back to.
I just like to say, I love the way in which you found a solution to not having to move around the class. It's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? The way that you can do all these activities and everyone can access them via Sparkjar and stay in their places. It's just wonderful. It's great.
Yes,
definitely. Yeah. Okay, so next thing we're going to look at are annotation tools, presenting, recording and whiteboards. So I showed it briefly before, and now Sylvie has talked a little about it and is going to touch on it a bit more. In fact, I think I'll show you down here in science topics. So this is an example of a little recording that I did. So when you put anything into Sparkjar that is annotatable, and we turn documents so that they will become annotatable for you, you can, as I said, present it, but you can also record. So you can basically press, it's not going to let me because I'm sharing the screen with you right now, but it would record my face in the corner whilst I annotate this document. So I would be doing my live annotations, pointing things out, talking this through as an example, and then afterwards I could share it back with the students, which is what this little video is here. I haven't got the sound on, but you'll be able to see my face appear in the corner, and then as I talk and speak, you'll be able to see the annotations appear and talk it through. And I think, Sylvie, you mentioned, didn't you, that this is something that you're doing with students if they're not present, when you go through, and if they're absent because they're self-isolating or they are off ill, they can still get an idea of what was done, go through the task, because this short explanation is there to review, go back to, and obviously it makes great revision resources for students as well. Annotation tools are throughout the app. So the other thing that Sylvie's going to talk about is whiteboarding. So if I just add a whiteboard now, it will show these tools at the top of the page. So just a normal pen, and you can make that any colour. So if your school's got specific pens for specific purposes in terms of colours, you can use that. You can use a highlighter. Some of them are preset, so you can set them up with whatever you regularly use. So there's the highlighter there as well. And then also you can add text notes, you can add voice notes, and we'll see later on with the marking tools. It's the same tools here, but basically anything you've written before appears so that you can reuse it. So maybe not relevant for a whiteboard particularly, but when you're marking, really useful to be able to keep using the same information again. And the same with voice notes as well. You can see voice notes you've used before, you can play them back to check what they were and reuse them really quickly. So that just gives an idea of what we're going to look at next. I think that covered the things that I had there.
Can I just add, with the voice note, what's quite nice is for them to do dictations as well, you know, so that's a really good exercise. When we did phonics with the year 7 children, the children who were not in the class, you know, were able to do it because of that as well. So that was a great tool to have. Yeah, so.
Great. Okay, back to you, Sylvie. So minimal planning.
Yes, so I think at this time, I mean, I don't know, I felt quite overwhelmed, you know, when we had to go into lockdown and so on. So to have minimum planning in the activities that I put in the topics, has made my teaching more effective, I felt, and I was able to target specific areas better as well, without stressing about which way was it that I needed to present certain activities or the language that I wanted to cover. So one of the things that I did, because we do subscribe to Kerboodle, and as a very quick again, settling an activity at the start of a lesson with a year 11. This is one I did with them just lately in October, at the beginning of October. So to elicit and practice new vocabulary in the target language, I simply asked them to highlight and annotate a text directly and to look at the language that is here in English at the bottom of that activity, find it in the text, annotate it, and once I've done that with them, then I will use extracts of that text to create very quick listening activities that are very short and with the pool of words that they would have been exposed to within the text, but different meanings, maybe using negative forms in them, maybe using different tense forms as well. And I felt that the children responded extremely well to those activities. So if we go to the next slide, I show you the annotation. So that's a kind of annotation that they will be doing. And then they will write down their language that they have covered within their organizers. Now, another thing that I did as a quick listening comprehension, I will take an extract from a transcript on les inégalités, as from, that's one we did recently. And I will ask the children to answer 5 questions about it. And then I will give them the transcript, make it visible into the topic that we are covering. And I will ask them to highlight the key language that was used for answering those questions. And then I will read that to them again, and they will just go through that listening process, and they'll read it to one another. So that reinforcement of the language covered is really, really important. Just looking at key vocabulary, key sentences together, and extracting that language to just add it to their organizers and reuse them independently later on in different contexts. So that's what I tend to do. I don't create things all the time because of the timing. So that's minimum planning. It's there. I can annotate it. 5 questions I think about, and then they just answer them. The other thing I did ahead of time was within the topics, as you can see here, just as a photo, I've created topics that make them work independently once they finish the task, or, again, at the start of the lesson, it could be, but I give them pretty clear instructions so they know what they need to do. And that is for year 10 and 11. The younger one have their 5-a-day starter, and that's what they work on as a settling in activity or Quizlet, which they have a folder for with the direct link within their topic as well. But within those specific folders here with year 11, the reading one, I have reading activities. I have a booklet of reading activities. The independent work one has sentence builders, grammar and vocabulary that they can work from, or translation. And they have also a listening folder, which is the, if you go back for the year 11, that's year 9. Yeah. For the transcript, this is language. So what I do here is I make the transcript visible to them when they've done the listening. And they work through those folders, and they need to do each week one of those activities. And they have found that quite rewarding. They are self-marking them. And again, for me to check that they've done one of those activities in the week, they just put it on the one-to-one chat. So I don't mark that, I go through it, and if it's not done, then I have a conversation with that student if it is needed. So that's what tends to happen. So the listening folder you had there was a listening folder with links for a year 9, and they had the actual listening and then the transcript to self-assess. So that's just to show you how organized it is, and then I make it visible as I wish, to them. That's what happens there. Okay. So the whiteboards I used extensively because I've always loved whiteboards, and I think for language teachers that's something I missed when we started going on lockdown, and having that tool was fantastic because remotely we could use it, we could collaborate, we could work together, and the children responded extremely well to that. So as you saw at the start, within my topics, I have a whiteboard folder, and we do activities on that all the time. So it's very versatile to use, and as quick starters, as plenary, as a quick listening activities. If you forgot to plan something, you can just have a whiteboard appear and create an activity on the spot for listening and translation, for children to test one another. So we use, one child will have a sentence builder, the other one will have the whiteboard, and they will do a translation activity like that. They will test one another's spelling. So for example, they will, with the year 7, when they were doing the month of the year, they simply just wrote the consonant and their friend had to fill in the vowels and so on. And that is done away from exercise book. Children who are absent can collaborate as well, which is amazing. So I just wanted to share just examples here. So as a quick starter, a translation into English in year 7, and they simply had to highlight, assez, vraiment, quelquefois, that kind of adverbs. And then they moved on into translating it to one another. And then in the exercise book, they translated the actual words into French. Then they had to write their own sentence on their whiteboard and extend it. I projected their work, one of the children's work, and we were assessing it together. How can we extend? What's missing? What should be added? Could we use a negative? Where would you put it? And that makes the pace of the lesson, much better. The other whiteboard here is simply a revision in year 8, where they just started talking about relationships, getting on with people, and not very simply in the je, on, and nous form. And I put the English, and then I do the starting letter, and they have to complete it, and then we go through it together as a class. And then the last one was a translation again with year 8, and they had to self-assess it. So they write it and then they self-assess their work. They may take a photo of it and show it to me on the one-to-one chat again to see how much they understood, and if we need to reinforce something in particular. But that's really quick to be able to do that. So for quick listening activities, I will do something like dates, birthday dates as a quick starter, where I can get on with something and read dates to them, and then they will write them in English on their whiteboard. And that interaction has been quite rewarding because it's very efficient, very fast. And again, I can check what they've done without going around the classroom, without looking at exercise book or anything like that. And they've got it within their topic folders. Or I can erase it as well. But,
so Sylvie, can I just check? So if you have some children who are self-isolating, are they still able to take part in the lesson as if they were in the room, as it were?
Yes. So what there's a live recording function on the chat, and I do it that way with them. So yes, and they've got you put a whiteboard for them. Yes, definitely. And the other thing that we're able to do through, I'll talk about it in a minute, but they can collaborate together, and that's the beauty of it, because they do not. I mean, I have a child that's been in isolation since September, and she will not come back at school for quite a while. So she feels that I mean, I've asked her if she wanted to go on a video call with another platform, but she's very comfortable with Sparkjar. And the live recording, she can put her hand up. It's a really good function. So she's in class with us, or not. Because we get quite noisy at times in the classroom. So we may decide that she's not on the call, but on the chat, she will let me know if she needs extra support or if she needs the visual on. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah. Awesome. So
that's really, really good. Yes, absolutely. So I just want to show you a little bit about modeling. Again, that's very simple. We started working as a class, and we were doing descriptions with year 7. So as a class, I asked my colleagues to send me their Bitmoji, and I was inspired by the MFL Twitterati last year when Joe asked people to send their Bitmoji to him. So I did something similar at school, and this is our IT man, Mr. Kerr. So the children, I had it with Bitmoji, I put him on Sparkjar in the topic, and I started going through what we had done. So they were going through the description, and I was writing what they were saying, and we looked at the position of adjectives. We looked at the verbs that were used, so I highlighted the verbs that were used. Why do we use this verb, and so on? And then, why do we use marron and not brun? And then we thought, because he was listening to music, so how do you, what language do you use? You go on word reference, and so on. So we wrote that together, and then I highlighted the verbs for them. We made sure the word order was really understood, as well as the agreement of adjectives, and we did quite a lot of speaking with that. So we did Mr. Kerr and another colleague, and then they went into Book Creator, and they had to share Bitmojis if they wanted to on the chat before, and they used those Bitmojis to write a description in Book Creator, which you can see one of the students, which that's not her name. I've asked them to do Monique. She's not called Monique, but anyway, so that's one of the students, and they wrote the description. Then I put one on the board, and we went through the speaking. So the mute letters, we do quite a lot of phonics at the start of year 7 with dictations and so on, making sure that the letters that are mute are really there. They remember them at the end of the word. You don't pronounce the S. And so on. And they spoke about the liaison with les yeux, because that's quite a tricky one for a year 7 student. Then they recorded themselves on Book Creator. They had to listen to themselves again, and they've got to have earphones, for their language lessons. They listened to themselves, and they were allowed to record it up to 3 times. And then what they did is they submitted it on assignment as a film. So I was able to listen to them, and I projected a few students' work. And that's really quite a good scaffolding that happened, and also a collaboration of students working together, because they were able to work with me on one tool, and then with Book Creator, they submitted it, but then all the other students could listen to one another. And that was highly rewarding for them. So following that, then we used the Joe as Bitmojis from last year, and then we did a guess who, where I described someone to them. They had to guess who it was using the language that was there. And then we reversed it, where they had to say, they don't know how to ask questions as such, but they will say il. So if it was il, I will go like that, elle, like that. And then they had to say, il a les yeux bleus. So, and then the voice had to go up for a question. Il a les yeux bleus. So yeah, okay, that would be it. And then so on, and they had to guess. And within Sparkjar, they can cross and circle and annotate if they wish to do that. So they did that within their Sparkjar. And then that was done. And then the next lesson, I created one with my colleagues at school, and they did that in their pairs at their settling in activity. And that was really rewarding because they had the settling in activity without any support, but they also had the support from that activity or the activities we had done before. So again, you know, for retrieval, that is very important to be able to do that. And if they were working in that class, I had no absentees, but if they had been working with someone else, they could have done that through the through the chat. I could have paired them up, but then it would have been in writing. It wouldn't have been in speaking. But yes, as far as speaking goes, that worked extremely well, and they were highly motivated to find the big emoji of teachers as well used. So that's it, yeah, for that bit. So we're moving, yeah.
Okay, switching. So now we're just going to look ahead at what Sylvie will go on to speak about. So chats, groupings and assignments. I think I've shared the wrong one there. Ah, there it is. So in Sparkjar, sorry, I'm not seeing it on my screen. There we go. So you've got a chat for each class, which we just saw. So an entire class chat, obviously mine's not real. I'm sure Sylvie's look really amazing with all the different students talking to each other, but it's a place where they can all talk together. Teachers are always present in every chat. So there's no hidden channels where students can have conversations without the teacher realising. So for instance, say there are students off who are self-isolating and you want to put them in a chat together, or you want to group students within the class. Obviously, normally you'd have far more students here, but let's say that we wanted these two students to be in a group together and they're going to work together. They would be in that chat. But I, as a teacher, am always in there and I can see everything that they write to each other. And I can make it so that they can't write, so I can switch off afterwards, that they can't talk to each other anymore and that kind of thing. Within Sparkjar, we've got a grouping functionality. So you can set up groups in advance. So for instance, in this class, we've got a high achieving group, but I could set up a separate group. Students don't see the name of this, so they wouldn't know what group they're in. So Sylvie and I were talking earlier and she was saying about native speakers quite often need tasks set specifically, and she's going to discuss that with you in a moment. But let's say that Kathy is a native speaker, so I take everybody else out and she's in that group herself. She doesn't know she's in it. But as I go through the app, there are lots of opportunities to use those preset groups. So when I make a chat with a new chat room, if I had a group of students that applied to, I could then put them straight in that chat without having to do anything else. Or when I set an assignment, so this is very similar to lots of other learning platforms. You set your task, you give a description, set a due date. You can go through, we can have got it so that you can specify if you want a digital submission or you want a handing in on paper. And also whether you want a task that you can really easily annotate, it's a PDF or an image, so that you can make sure that you only get certain types of work submitted, or as Sylvia said, you can have all sorts of different files as well, and then you can set worksheets and things. But here I can either take out the students tapping who I don't want to receive it, or I can go straight to my group and say, actually, I want it targeted at that student or that group of students and set it just for those students. So I can really quickly target students without having to do too much complicated work there in terms of setting it up. So I think, Sylvie, you're going to have a look at that in a bit more detail. I think the only thing I haven't really showed you there is these one-to-one chats, but it's basically the same setup. So each student has the opportunity to talk to you one-to-one if you want. So for instance, when Nathan was testing this out with me for a video we were making, he sent me a message in one of these, I'm not sure which one, just to say like he's testing the app and to communicate one-to-one basically. I'm not sure which one it was now. So Sylvie, I will switch back so that you can show us how you use those features with your students.
Thank you. Yes, the other thing that is quite good about the chats is if they put something in the wrong chat, you can hide it to the others. it will be always visible to you, but not to other children. Or if you feel it's not appropriate, you can hide it as well. I mean, I know when I started using the app, they got so excited about being able to chat to one another that, you know, you need to set boundaries basically right from the start. But it's if I go quickly through what we use the chat for in MFL and how we found that useful. So you've got the entire class chat, and you can remotely demonstrate through that, which is quite nice, which you can do through anything really. But if you want to do something on the one-to-one, or if you want to model someone's work, it's a little bit like you can use the topic to do that. But it's quite nice to do it through the chat, because the children can then join a conversation. So here I've got an example of one of my colleagues in languages who used one of my students, Cameron, who is, we did a piece of writing. He planned it according to the instructions that he was given. So that was used then as a model for all the students who were absent, to show that his plan was clear. He used different adjectives, opinions, reasons to answer all the bullet points of the question, and so on. And the student could see that work, and then could see what the teacher had given as support and move on from there. It's also quite useful when you don't want something as an assignment, but you want to give a one-to-one feedback to a student as a teacher. So I use that extensively. For example, if I do a little test at the beginning of a lesson, and I ask them to take a photo of that test before they start self-assessing it. So I know what they have done, and I can refer back to it. So it's a proof of the work that is done during the lesson. So I used to go around the classroom and check the work. Now I can't do that. So I ask them to quickly take a photo, and they need to be taught how to take a photo that's clear, because they tend to rush and so it's again about the clarity of the instructions. But they got into the habit of taking a photo of the work done during the lesson, putting it on the one chat. I may then mirror their work or not, or use it as a model in the entire class chat or not. But at least I can see what has happened during the lesson. And I can use their work to extend, to model, or simply just as a proof of the work covered during that session. So it's a lovely tool. The other good thing about it is if you have a child who is absent, you can communicate with them directly through that tool, and you can create a group. I create a group of absentees that I adapt. And then I can communicate with them, and I can do the live filming as well, live recording for those students. Something else that in this time, our children in our school are set in a sitting plan, and they can't move. And I don't always want them to work in pair with the person sitting next to them. I want them to work with other students in the class. So it's a bit like a wiki, where I get them to work together on the one-to-one chat. Not the one-to-one chat, I create groups within the chats. So they work in pairs or in threes together. And I may put a whiteboard there with something in writing that they need to extend. And then I can annotate it within the chat. I've got that ability, but what they can do is take a screenshot of it. They can annotate it and then put it back into the chat, and then that work can grow. I can then project that on the board if I wish, or work with groups of students individually and set some work like that. So that can be done through assignments, but it's quite nice to do it through the chat. There's a lightness to it, which they like, a little bit like WhatsApp or something like that. They really enjoy doing that. So the grouping is used extensively in my lesson, and I change the groups all the time within the chat to allow children to work with different students when they're doing that. So it could be simply self-assessing, peer assessing something they've done in writing, or translation, extending writing, looking at how to improve 150 words, what's missing from the answer, and so on. So we're going to look at assignment because grouping is used in assignment extensively. So first of all, I just want to go through the kind of assignment that I use, and we look at tailored assignments. So what I liked during lockdown is I was able to be quite flexible in the assignments that I set because I was using Sparkjar. I would have been more limited if I wasn't using that tool. So I was able to use flipped lessons with grammar, for example, where within the assignment, I gave different links for the student to use. We've got a YouTube platform as well, so they were able to link to that or to specific videos in This Is Language. And then they so this is an example of a colleague of mine that did a flip learning of Passé Composé with one class. And the students had to make notes about it. And then they're the one that conducted the lesson that followed. And that was amazing that they were able to do that. She compiled the work that was done on the assignments. And then we created a PowerPoint. And then the children were talking in turn through what they had created. So that was a really nice activity for them to do. And the fact that we're able to put the links and the support that they need within the assignment, and they just need to click on it, that helps. So they can link to the topics, to the topic folder that's relevant if it's the case, and you can make it visible through the topic folder, but you've got that flexibility. And with the grouping, what's been really quite nice here is an example. We've got in year 8, we have a student who, so in year 9, they have to choose between French and Spanish, unfortunately. So this student is a native speaker. So it's an extreme case. So he's able to do some GCSE papers. As practice, was the rest of the class will be working on something else that's linked within the scheme of work. So we can differentiate extremely within the assignment that way. And it makes it a lot easier, so you set 2 different sets of assignments, and then it makes it a lot easier. And within year 11 and 10, I can work because we don't have set classes. So I can set foundation papers and higher papers in different assignments as well. That works extremely well. So they can submit anything, but you need to make sure that you allow them to do that, because there's a function that says PDF only. And at the beginning, I just couldn't understand what I was doing wrong. So that again has been incredible. So they can submit PDF, photos, extract from their book in Book Creator, because in French and in Spanish, we use Book Creator extensively for recordings. They can use iMovies, and now that they can use the green screen, we've traveled extensively in the month of May. We went around South America, and we went to Canada as well. So the films that they made were incredible. They also use clips and My Talking Avatar. And with My Talking Avatar, you will see examples of work by students done, I think it was in June, possibly. So if you go back to Dunottar Lang and look on Twitter and look at media, you will see what they have done. They use My Talking Avatar to describe what they were doing, but then they also put the text within iMovie in French, so which would have been automatic in clips, but they enjoy the visual of My Talking Avatar because it's quite fun for students. So that again has made MFL quite lively, and within the school they loved it. So this is an example of one of my colleagues' work. So she has done to submit, PowerPoint, video, writing, Book Creator, whatever they wanted. And we had ChatterKid, that was recorded. They use the apps that we have within our app stores. They use Puppet Pals, they use Legos. The creativity was immense, and that worked extremely well. And they were using the target language and enjoying it, which was highly rewarding. So yeah, that's what they did there. So there's a lot of flexibility within Sparkjar to allow you to see all these things. And as language teachers, it is essential that they are using the target language, even if they are learning remotely, which is something we were able to do throughout lockdown, which was incredible, frankly. So this is an example of when students work in year, I think 7 or 8. Possibly, I can't remember. Olivia is in year 8, yeah. So she has submitted that piece of work through Book Creator, and then I asked her to do recordings of that. And when she recorded, she pronounced the ENT at the end of verbs. So within Sparkjar, you've got the possibility to resubmit the work. So I corrected her, and I did some exercises. I recorded a tongue twister for her, and she practiced it, and then she recorded herself again and submitted that as a film through the assignments. The resubmission was absolutely perfect, and she was able to go back to it to revise. So when she's using the language, and especially ER verbs, well, verbs with il plural form, she remembers that she mustn't, pronounce the ENT. And being able to retrieve what has been recorded has proved highly beneficial for them. They can listen to things again or go through topics and listen to models that I would have recorded for them as well. Now, what I found, it's really important that the labeling of my assignments is clear, because when they go back to it, they need to understand what what the work was, and so if it's just homework, they don't really understand what it's about. So if I put homework and it's a topic that we're doing on the environment, I would be very, very specific. And they have weekly vocabulary learning. So I want to see what they're doing and how they're progressing. And yes, I can go on Quizlet and have a look when they're doing it on Quizlet, but I just ask them to submit a picture of their percentage on their test. And then I look at what was missed out, and that will support my next activity for them as a starter for the following lesson. So that's been highly beneficial. And also I tend to, I don't mark that, I just make a comment. So I record my voice, and through lockdown, they said it was really nice to have to hear, well, not my voice specifically, I don't think so, but someone's voice, and I make a little joke, or I say something in the target language, or I ask them, and that kept them going. It was lovely to be able to do that. So the other thing that has worked well this term, I had to be absent for a conference, so I said cover work, and through an assignment. So I will collect, that, and then I don't necessarily need to mark the work. I need to see what they have done. And again, I can make a comment and reuse that comment for all the students, or I can mark the work if I wish to do so. But that flexibility is there, and the monitoring of the work through assignment is a good tool, but it can be quite stressful to receive all those assignments. That's why I like to use the chat extensively, to give feedback to students. So the other thing with the clarity of the labeling, we tend to do quite a few resubmission, and I don't ask them to resubmit a lot, but I ask them to take responsibility for their writing when they're doing GCSE or even earlier on. But when they do 150 words, they know the marking criteria, because they're in the topics and they can always refer back to them. So the bands are very clear. So when I mark their work, I ask them to improve certain things. And I said, they've got to know what they did wrong. So that student, for example, realized that she was just repeating herself, and especially the word important. So she looked at ways to improve that. So her third task was to improve that, and in her next resubmission, she corrected that, she resubmitted, and she worked in the bands above. And that's the kind of thing that Sparkjar has helped us with, is making the student responsible for their learning a lot more, and resourceful. They refer back to what is needed. As far as the marking goes, they need to go back to the criteria, and they don't lose it, because I had students that had folders in the past who lost bits of papers quite regularly. So that makes it a little bit easier. And then, you know, they write their own marks in their books, because obviously I can't touch their books, but I can annotate everything in Sparkjar for them as well. So to monitor progress, if I'm not in the classroom, or if the students are not in the classroom, that has been great, using assignment, but also using the chat. And I use assignment for classwork. So at the start of lessons, as you saw, you know, they do a settling activity, but sometimes they may have a little test. So I may want to check their self or peer assessment through assignments. And at the start, I didn't ask them to submit the test done on the one-to-one chat. Now I do that, but I also, at the beginning of the year, asked them to submit their marking on the one-to-one chat. And then I projected that, because they miss things out and so on. So they really need to pay attention to every single element of the marking. And now they are spot on. They are incredibly precise in their self and peer assessment. They know how to correct their work, and it has been very effective. So they've got a pack of Post-it in their exercise books, and they just do little tests like that regularly with, you know, they self-assess, and then I just ask them to post that on the assignment. So I have an idea of the level that they have, and I don't have to mark it, which is really good. With my 10 and 11, I tend to do that with the 90 words and the 150 words. That's always done in lessons, and I'll talk to you through that in a second. So if you go, yeah. So as I was saying, with Quizlet and things like that, I just make a little comment, and here, you know, it's a typed comment or it's a recorded comment. It's always a praise. Well, if they get a certain percentage, or, you know, do it again, how can you improve it? But I do record myself because I feel that if they're not in class, then that just keeps that element of engagement going. So going back to the 90 words and the 150 words, I found that if they do it for home, they do it sometimes for homework, but it's a rare occasion. I try to make them do that in class, and I start with it being a very scaffolded activity, with them having a kind of a support strip with the element of the questions that they need to answer, and the tenses that they need to use in each element of the question for the 90 words, for example. And that avoid the use of Google Translate when they do it in lessons. After that, then I may give them some key language the first time they do that in year 10. And then little by little, we move away from that, and we move on to just the questions and making sure they have a ticking list. So have I used three tenses? Have I answered all the elements of the question? And so on. Have I given opinions and justified the opinions, and just simple points that they need to tick. And then for the 150 words, it's very similar. So they start with the scaffolding again in the same way, and then they move on to simply having a ticking list of key elements that need to be embedded. Right, so I move on to the marking tools that we have on Sparkjar. So Catherine mentioned, that briefly within those tools at the top are there for everything. They're there for topics, they're there for whiteboards, but for assignment you can use, simple checking, same recording for all the children if you wish, or you can reuse things as you wish as well. You don't need to type the same thing all the time. You can reuse element of what you've typed. So it saves an enormous amount of time, because often you tend to repeat. If it's something on adjectival agreement as earlier, you tend to type the same thing. So you can reuse that, and you can personalize it by adding the name of the child to it. I also use the recording, if it's something that I want them to model. I may ask them questions through the recording. I tend to make it very personal as well by just, as I say, putting their name to it. But there's always that respond to feedback that I am expecting. So I'm not always expecting a resubmission. They can redo element of the work and simply post that on the one-to-one chat. And if it's not done, then I follow up the next lesson or something like that. So I don't need to mark another assignment. And that simplifies my life and theirs as well. They know what is expected. And they know that they need to read the feedback and respond to it. And Sparkjar tells me if they haven't read it as well. So that's a brilliant tool to have for that. So that's within the mark book that you have that. So here, if you can see, that's one of my mark book. That's right. So you can see what the children have done if they resubmitted the work. So here it's a student's work that was submitted the first time. So that's a child in year 7 or 8, I can't remember. And then that's a resubmission that has been corrected. And that's really fantastic, because they are responsible for that. They just get on with it. And this is an example of my mark book. So if I clicked on one of the marked element, it will show me the work. So like here, it shows me the work of the child, and it shows me that the comments I've made. So that's highly useful when you want to monitor the progress of one child in particular. Again, those comments can be reused for other students. You don't need to rewrite them. So they just come out, and you can reuse them as often as you wish. So, that was a submission that was done. And if you go, when we have parents evening, you can make students visible or invisible. So parents don't see the mark of other students or any other comments. This is our award system, so we have credits. I don't do efforts, but I look at the completion of the work. So the number that you have in a corner tells you how often they submitted it. If you've asked for resubmissions, or work that was slightly late is in a different color, and so on. And I tend to archive the work once it's been submitted, but they can always reuse it. They can go back to all their work as they wish, and so can you. You can access that. Okay, I think that is it for me.
So that just leaves us with one little tiny bit before we take questions, if that's okay, Jo. I will just, to make this work, I've just got to be a bit clever about how I share my screen now. So if you bear with me 1 second.
No problem. I absolutely love the whole class feedback there, Sylvie, and the way that you can make some feedback and then assign it to the whole class or to individuals. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time.
I can imagine. Yeah, fantastic. I don't know if it's possible to show later on how to sort of set up a dummy class, or to give people an idea on how to do that within Sparkjar. I don't know if that would be a possibility,
Yeah, sure,
but I think that
definitely.
might be a nice idea, just to give people a flavour of how easy it is to set up a class, and if you have a code, or how the students join the class and things like that.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So I'm just going to share my screen. So basically, when you're sharing a screen on an iPad, you have to, you would have seen before, I wasn't able to show you my face on it, but there is a little workaround that I'm going to do now, which is to use a different app to show my screen. So I'm back in Sparkjar. I'm in a class chat where you can see I've been playing around with video calls. If you go to the website, which I'll share the web address at the end of the webinar, you'll see there's like a video with my face as if we're in a classroom video call. And I'm just going to start one now. I'm just going to mute myself so that it doesn't come through in loads of different places, because I don't want to cause loads of feedback to everybody. If I can do that, where is that? I'm not sure which way around you can hear, whether you can hear me as part of the video call or not. So I've muted myself in the video call. I'll look this way. So in the video call, you've got some tools as a teacher. So obviously yourself, you can mute, but you can also mute the whole class so that they can't contribute. Students that were present would appear along the bottom here, and it tells you how many are present and absent. And they always appear in the same order in the class, so that you can see quite easily who's there, who's not. And during a lesson, they can raise their hands, lower their hands, etc. So that they can basically, if I just switch quickly between me and a student, I'm not sure which class I started that from. I think it's here. Oh, I won't be able to do that on here, I don't think. Never mind. I think I've closed it by leaving. I'll go back, start again. So they can raise their hand, which is what Sylvie was talking about with the students. If they're absent and they're at home, or they can also do a thumbs up, so you can see how well they've understood things. And when you're in Sparkjar, you can still go through and present things. So let's say I just want to find where I've got something nice to share. So we were looking at that whiteboard earlier. I can present that to the class who are on the call, and it will go to all their screens and they'll see the same thing at the same time without me having to go through and say, open this and then open this resource and then open that whiteboard and try and direct them that way. So I'm just going to end the call, cancel that. And I will switch back to our faces and then answer questions. So I think your first one, Joe, was how do people go about trying it out? Is that?
Yeah, if that's okay, guess? Just to get a flavour for how to create a class, how to get students to join the class, if it's a code or if it's an email, or how that works.
So when basically, for the way that Sparkjar works is that we are a license-based piece of software. So the school joins up and we sync in with the school's information system. So that might be SIMS or ISAMS or CMIS, whatever you're using to sort of take your registers and that kind of thing. We pull the data from that to build the classes and put the right students in the right classes with the right teachers. That means everything's set up in advance. So shared classes are already populated. There's no having to add a teacher. There's no codes other than the very first time that students join, when one teacher for every student will need to share a code. So let's say year 7 go to Sylvie first. The first day they're using Sparkjar. Sylvie shows them a code, they join up, she approves them, and that's it, they're in. They never have to do that again. They're in Sparkjar then in all of their classes. If you want to have a go at playing with the app, that's brilliant, and we would love that. The way that that works is that you get in contact with us and we set you up a playground version of the app like I've been showing you this evening, and that comes with a couple of classes and your 5 fake students, and that you can switch between and be teacher or be student, and you can give other people your login details and you can be a class together and try it out. So if, say, in your school, you're someone that looks at new tech and wants to share those ideas with other people, you could share it with them and they could then sign in, and you could be the teacher and they could be the students, or vice versa, and play around with it and just get an idea of how it works. Hopefully that's answered the question. So I guess the next thing to do will be if I just shared the end of our presentation, which is where you can find out about us. That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
been really fascinating to hear about all the ways you can use Sparkjar in the present context, and seeing all your practical examples, Sylvie. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to Sylvie, because we're in several schools, several primary and secondary schools, with students from year 1 to year 13, and Sylvie at Dunottar has just been brilliant in terms of pushing what the app can do and asking for more and helping to kind of push the way that we develop, which is brilliant for us, because we really like users like Sylvie who do lots of exciting things with it that help us to see what else could it be doing to make teaching easier for teachers.
And it has made, when we went into lockdown, it made it so much easier. And to keep the continuity of the teaching was incredible, and to keep the speaking going. So for MFL teachers, that's something that was extremely rewarding within the department. That we kept it going that way. So we felt that the children, in fact, made amazing use of the app and technology during lockdown. We had they took us on travels. They created escape rooms. They were unbelievable. So a lot of your ideas, Joe, were used in the classroom by the students, and were shared through Sparkjar as well, which was incredible.
Thank you. I remember seeing your tweet about the Guess Who Bitmoji activity, and I was really proud. It was really lovely to see that. Yeah, it's one. I think what you're doing here is absolutely fantastic. So with the green screen in iMovie, that's what you've been doing with getting the children to talk about like virtual adventures, etc. Is that right?
Yes. So what they've done is what they did. There was one boy I can't share because of I couldn't share because of pictures of children as well.
Of course, that's fine. Yeah, we understand.
They covered a ball with green paper, and so that ball traveled around different countries in Spain, not in Spain, in Southern America, in Spanish, sorry. And they spoke about each place, and then the children decided to create, someone, I'm so sorry, on Twitter created a Monopoly game, with different countries and different places.
Mr. Francis, I think it was. Mr.
That's
Francis
right,
from Nottingham,
Yes, so they created that game, and they contributed to it on the chat in their groups. So they created that Monopoly game together. They divided, the work that they did. But the film was incredible because that ball went from one child. Well, it didn't, because they were each in lockdown, but they threw that ball, and then it came to another child. So you had another country in South America that child spoke about. So it was really cool. I think it was simple, very simple. And then, at the end, the ball was, there was a goal that was scored, and all the noise elements that you can get in iMovie were put together. And it was great fun. And they used the target language continuously, and it just meant that they spoke in Spanish and in French. And you will see some of the examples I have shared on when they used avatars and Legos. I've shared that on the Dunottar Lang or Chatterpix, as well. So,
amazing. And how would you assess engagement from the students with Sparkjar? I mean, if for example, you've got children in the class and children at home, how do you assess how, for example, the children at home, how engaged they are with the process? Because obviously it can be quite limiting, can't it, with if you've only got access to them via the chat, or maybe they can be watching you. But how do you see what I mean? Because obviously in the classroom situation, you can see their faces and you can work out if they've got it or not. But how do you do that if some children are accessing the lesson remotely?
So you can see their faces through the live recording.
It's like a 2 second, so they're a bit like like that. Right. So you've got a bit of live feedback, but without the bandwidth of needing to see people live like in a Zoom call.
So that's quite amusing. But yes, I mean, they can talk, they press on the recording button. So I have one student that joins in like that. Yes, that's what they do. But the rest, I mean, you know, a lot of you, yes, I've seen a comment about saying, thank you, Eduardo. A lot of you may use other platforms, but the facility with Sparkjar is, you know, being iPad based. There's a lot of elements that I didn't find in other video calls, you know. So, but no, I've got two children who are, you know, in isolation in different classes, and I've been for a long time, and they joined through that, and that's been sufficient for them. And they've enjoyed it, and they've enjoyed the collaboration with their partners, you know, in the activities that they undertook.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear, because I think that can be limiting. I think if you've got in a hybrid context, you've got some children at home, some people in class, and I think this seems to have really resolved that issue in lots of ways. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think the chat helps with that as well. If you, like Sylvie was saying, a student has to like come in through the video calling, it can be very noisy in the classroom in between times, and that's not necessarily helpful to them. But then if they're available through the chat, that means that they can be getting on with something without having to worry about what's happening in class without them until the point at which they want some feedback or it's time to come back together again and the call comes through again. Which we try to make it flexible.
Sorry, Catherine. The others support them through the chat, but also if I demonstrate something, I record it so they see that. So that they've adapted really well. They prefer it to the video call that we use as well when we were in lockdown. You know, that's what they've said. They found it less stressful and invasive. And they do the work. They submit it on the one-to-one chat. I can, you know, check. So that seems to have worked.
Brilliant. So just to clarify, if attendees or people watching the recording wanted to set up a class, they just get in contact with Sparkjar, and then do you have like a trial for like 30 days, or how does that work exactly?
So because it's school based, it would usually be that we would work with the school and decide the best. There is like so normally what we would do is say 100-day money back guarantee kind of thing, rather than a sort of 30-minute trial, because a 30-day trial, because actually once you're set up, you would rather you use it really well than it kind of be like go to all the trouble of setting it up and then have a really short time to see it working. So we'd rather that you use it for a longer period, see what value you can get from it, and then if the decision was no, we don't like it, then we would respect that. But the best thing to do is to get in contact through the website, because we can do a bit more detailed demo, and then obviously give you much more detailed information about how to go about using the app. It's not, if you download it, you won't be able to do anything with it, so you need us to set stuff up for you that way. So best thing is to use the website to get in contact with us.
Fantastic, lovely. Okay, well, I'm not sure if there's any more questions. Feel free in the chat if you have any other burning questions. I mean, Helen just made a comment about some students really do have problems with opening their cameras and only want to chat in the chat box with the teacher or the classroom learning assistant. It can be a question of confidence, which is true, absolutely, I think. But presumably they could have their cameras turned off but still be able to interact using audio. Is that right, or not?
So the camera switches at the school level. So the school decides whether they want student video to be visible or not. If it's not, then when students press to talk, their avatar, so their picture that they use in the app, would appear instead. And if the school has said no, video is fine, then they only appear when they press to talk. The rest of the class can see their tiny little sort of moving thumbnail that the teacher sees. So there's that aspect, but it's almost like they're in class normally. They would be able to see each other when they look around, but it's not the full face, oh, how does so-and-so look today, kind of in your face. They literally are, you know, a little tiny
avatar.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. I mean, I'd heard of Sparkjar. I know, Sylvie, you've given me like a little demo of it, but we've really done a deep dive into it tonight. And I think having all those practical language examples for Key Stage 3 and for Key Stage 4 have been so useful to see how you've incorporated different ideas and different sort of evidence-based teaching into your practice with sort of sentence builders and retrieval practice. It's been fascinating. It's been, and the way that you've had like a multimodal approach, the way that you've got the video, the audio, the recording all together, and the way that you can annotate, the way that the children don't have to walk around the class, they can do everything from the seat. It's been really fascinating. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you for hosting, Joe, and
Thank you so much,
thanks
Joe.
again, Sylvie.
No problem at all. Okay, we'll stop recording now if that's okay, and then we'll say our goodbyes. But that was fascinating. Thank you so much. Excellent stuff.